I think one of the worst things we tell ourselves is that we are somehow deserving of the bad relationships we are in. And I think it comes from often when we see someone in a good relationship, we think, oh, like she deserves that. Oh, they deserve that good relationship. So then we start to think we must deserve the relationship we are in. And it could not be farther from the truth. I was thinking about it recently about what causes us to stay in a pattern of bad relationships, bad friendships, etc., etc. And I think it all starts by one accidental movement. One accident. Something completely not our fault. For example, I had a bad relationship with my mom growing up. We had a very toxic relationship. My mom, she passed away. She was a drug addict, which led her to sometimes be, most of the time, very verbally abusive, sometimes physically abusive. Very neglectful. She would often leave us home alone while she'd go off with boyfriends for far too long, like multiple days at a time when we were very young. And often when things wouldn't go right in our lives, my mom would often blame me as a child. So I spent most of my childhood seeking my mom's approval. And because, sorry, there's like a weird noise going on behind me, but it's fine. Because I often would see other people with their relationships and think, so one thing to note is when I was a struggling kid, I was really trying to get my mom's approval. I think I didn't realize I was trying to lash out to get attention. But something that would happen is that when I was trying to get my mom's approval or trying maybe to get her attention, I don't really know what caused it. I was quite rebellious. I started drinking at a really young age. I also got into drugs at a young age. I was stealing. I was put on probation. I was skipping school. A lot of those things. There was a time at like 14, my mom let me move out to move in with some friends. And during that time, I lashed out the most. That's when I got put on probation. I got in a lot of trouble. I was skipping school, getting, in trouble every single day. And I didn't realize at the time, now that I'm an adult, I look back and I realized, well, I was just trying to get my mom's attention. I was just a kid that was lashing out and seeking love. But at the time, I often thought, because my mom would say things like, well, I would treat you this way. I wouldn't treat you this way if you weren't such a hard child. Even though I now look back as an adult and realize I acted that way because she treated me that way, because I was the child. Like, I was just a little kid. I'm like the most, I don't want to say I'm innocent, but I'm like the most innocent person most people will meet. I hate getting in trouble. I hate hurting anyone's feelings. I like to follow the rules. As a kid, I was the complete opposite. But I hated doing it. I more so was doing it because I wanted my mom to pay attention. I just didn't realize that's why I was doing it. But it was a result of my home life. Does that make sense? But because my mom would phrase it as, I wouldn't treat you this way. I wouldn't hurt you if you hadn't have done all those things. Even though hers came before mine. You see what I'm saying? But because of that, I believed that I was deserving of the relationship I had with my mom. And I would look at people at my school that were like maybe going to church, and they were like the really good kids who got straight A's, who had these nice home lives, and I'd think, oh, well, they're deserving of that relationship. So that instantly made me think that I was deserving of the type of love I was receiving. And because of that, I spent the majority of the rest of my life seeking out relationships that reminded me of my mother, to try and change the pattern, to try and win over their approval, to try and get them to love me the way I wanted my mom to love me. I think I had this idea in my head that if I could make these like toxic female friendships change and treat me properly, it would somehow mend the way I felt about my relationship with my mother. And even if that had ever happened, it would not have mended the way I felt about my past. But I think that's where a lot of our relationship cycles come from, is we get in an unfortunate situation, whether it's a platonic friendship, whether it's a coworker that treats you poorly, whether it's a mother relationship, it's a boyfriend, whatever. And we kind of start to think, I think we convince ourselves that this is what we are worth. And then maybe it's a survival tactic. I don't know why, because obviously we are deserving of respect and love and kindness. Everyone is. But we convince ourselves that this is what we're worth. And it seems like after that, until we realize we weren't deserving of that, like it wasn't our fault, we repeat this cycle. And again, I'm not saying we seek it out, but almost like we accept it, because I could have cut those friendships off at any moment. But I was like subconsciously seeking out friendships. And I had to realize at one point I was the pattern. I ended up making a really good friend, Brooke, and she was kind of the first person to call it out, that I had a lot of toxic female friendships who was very obvious to her from the outside, used me a lot. As a content creator, I had a lot of friends that they would use me for a lot of things, and they would never do anything in return. And I was fine with that, because I thought if I got their approval, that it was somehow making everything right and proving that I could win over. I don't even know how to make it make sense in my brain now, but I know that's what I was trying to do. And it's actually something I discussed with my therapist, and she's like, yeah, it's actually a very common pattern that whenever we feel deserving of poor treatment, we somehow think that that's all we can have, and we kind of seek it out. Not even seek it out, but we accept it. Because there have been people that I've met that treat other people very kindly, but they might walk all over me. Obviously, someone who's like abusive, that they might be more like that with multiple people, but someone who's just like, maybe they are very give and take in their other friendships, but they kind of walk all over me. Usually it's because I set the scene and I let them know, you can walk on me. I'm a doormat. You can step. You know what I'm saying? And so we allow it. We allow more things than we should because we're thinking that we're righting our quote unquote wrongs in our past. And my therapist had said that that's a very common pattern, especially in relationships. She was saying if you had a boyfriend that cheated on you, but he was to say stuff like, well, if you had done X, Y, or Z, I wouldn't have felt the need to cheat. Or I cheated because you made me feel like this. They do something, it's pretty toxic to make you feel like it was your fault. And then those people, she said, will often then find themselves, if they believe it to be true. If she said it, the type of person that can realize I was not deserving of that was his fault, they're able to break that cycle then. But when you start to tell yourself, oh, maybe he was right, it's because something I did, even if you're telling it to yourself subconsciously, then you will kind of allow more negative and poor behavior in other relationships because you're thinking you're give more of yourself than you need to because that's what you feel like you did wrong in order to deserve, again, not actually deserve, but quote unquote deserve that cheating. So say if someone was like, oh, I cheated on you because you didn't cook me dinner every single night, I came home from work and you didn't cook me dinner every single night. The house wasn't spotless, even though you were also working. Maybe you're also working and you're taking care of the kids and you can't always do everything. Then maybe you have convinced yourself that in the next relationship you need to go above and beyond and drain yourself dry of energy in order to keep the peace. But something I realized, I saw this quote on TikTok, is that we teach ourselves to be quiet to keep the peace. We teach ourselves to do whatever someone wants to people please in order to keep the peace. But whose peace are we keeping? Not ours, theirs. And ultimately, the only way out is through. The only way out of these kinds of cycles is to accept that you are in some level. Okay, I hate saying that because obviously if someone is watching this and they're in a domestic violence situation, this is not what we're talking about. Okay, that is something where I will put resources below. I would rather you call for help. Obviously, you need to get yourself out in the best way possible. I'll put resources. This is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about maybe you have friends that walk all over you. Okay, maybe you're a little bit of a people pleaser. I was. People just they treat you poorly. Your friends always you're the last person to get invited, or you feel they exclude you a lot and they only call you when they need you. That's kind of more so what I'm talking about, where you have convinced yourself it's what you deserve. And so what you kind of have to do, and I hate saying this because it feels negative. So basically what my therapist explained to me is that you have to kind of accept that you are some part of the problem. Not that you were deserving of how they treated you, but on some level you either allowed it or you accepted it or something, because you were trying to prove something in your head. You're trying to prove to yourself that maybe you're deserving of something that happened in the past, or that you were trying to prove that maybe the person in your past was right. Maybe you're trying to prove to yourself they were right and that you didn't go above and beyond and that's why they cheated on you. Because maybe you're trying to make it out in your head that they weren't the villain. And what she explained to me is the reason we do that is we hold that person in the past in higher regards than we hold ourselves. If you're holding the people in your life that treat you poorly at higher regards than you hold yourself, you are always going to continue to let them treat you poorly because you somehow have convinced yourself you are less than them. So that is why you continue that cycle. You have to come to terms with the fact no one is better than anyone. No one is deserving of poor treatment or toxic behavior. You have just somehow convinced yourself you are because you didn't want to disrupt the peace in their life, because you have convinced yourself that they're better than you, that they are correct, that they are the right person. Or it could also be out of fear of backlash or something. But we have to break that cycle. We have to break that cycle because if not, it continues on and on and on. For me, the cycle stopped when I had a friend come into my life, Brooke, who treated me so well that I found myself trying to mess up the friendship. I found myself, like, we had like not an argument, but she moved out of the state, which is very sad. And we were all walking, and I found myself kind of like lashing out at her, saying, well, you're going to move and we're not going to talk to each other anyways. Like, this will be the end of our friendship. And then I ended up crying the whole way home on the train. She said she cried the whole way home on the train. And I like sent her this voice note apologizing. It makes me tear up because I think about, I just didn't feel worthy of such a good friendship. And I thought I might as well mess it up now because it's not going to last. She has not lived in New York for 2 years. We FaceTime every single week. We text and voice note every single day. She's moving back in about a year. Our friendship has not changed at all. If anything, it's gotten stronger, you know? Oh, that made me so emotional. It just goes to show that I spent so long chasing these female friendships that reminded me of my mom because I was hoping I could try and prove to myself that my mom wasn't that bad. You see how much of a weird toxic cycle that is? I can't even explain it of why we do it. I don't know why we have this weird phenomenon because I was just trying to convince myself maybe my mom really wasn't that bad. Maybe I really was the problem. And if I had been better, she would have treated me better. Maybe that somehow would have made me just feel better about the situation, but it doesn't actually change it. In the end, now that I have realized I was not the problem and no adult should abuse their child and say that their child is the reason that they lose their home because their child was bad in school. You know, when I was a kid, I didn't realize. I was like, oh, we lost our home. We couldn't pay our bills because I got detention. I skipped school. Now that I'm older, I realize that those don't correlate. You know, me skipping school a few times, getting detention, didn't do anything for our bills. You see what I'm saying? That doesn't excuse the things I was doing, doesn't excuse the fact I was stealing or going to detention, but it didn't make me deserving of child abuse. And same for those other friends. I gave and gave and gave to those friends. In the moment I would say, like, set a boundary. Once Brooke was like, you got to set boundaries with people. Because I would tell her, oh my gosh, I know I just don't have time for this or that because I basically would like run myself dry helping all of my friends with their work. And she's like, you know, just tell them you can't go sometimes. It's okay. Like, they're not going to get mad. And if they get mad, that's on them. And I remember thinking, like, I knew some of them specifically would get mad because that is the relationship that we had built, that I had accepted. And the moment that I started to tell those friends, I actually can't help out today, they stopped talking to me. And the friendships ended over time. But now I have friends. I have so many creator friends now. Shout out to all my creator friends where I actually felt myself get nervous because I had a few friends ask me if I could come and help them film YouTube videos. And it was like they were also willing to help me film YouTube videos. Again, it was like a give and take. It was a nice thing. We're also friends that have hung out in other ways. You know, it wasn't just for that. So like very different than my old type of friendships. But I still had that fear in the back of my mind that if I told them, oh, I actually can't today, I'm busy, that they would be mad at me. And the moment I texted them, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, I'm busy, they were like, oh my gosh, girl, don't worry about it. We love you. We're thinking about you. Next time. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that is beautiful. That is so beautiful to be able to say no if you can't do something and not be afraid of someone getting mad at you. And I had just convinced myself that is what all female friendships would be like when I was in my old toxic friendships because I didn't want to disrupt the peace. I was willing to have this fire burning inside of me and this miserable feeling about those old friendships and this drained energy because I was so afraid of disrupting their peace. And now I'm at peace. I don't know how they are, but I am at peace. And I deserve to be at peace. You deserve to be at peace. It is so sad that we convince ourselves that somehow we are worthy or deserving of mistreatment, and then we allow that cycle to continue. And the only person that can stop that cycle for you is you. Again, I had people come into my life to show me there was different ways of treatment, and I hope everyone has that. But if not, you can simply stand up and say, this is not okay. The way you're treating me is not okay. If you don't want to have conflict, I hate confrontation, just take a step back. Just be busy. Just be out of office whenever they contact you. Just set boundaries. Show yourself that you are worthy of something else. Seek out new friendships. When you find a friend that feels too good to be true, or you find a relationship that feels too good to be true, try it out because maybe it's not. Maybe you're scared of something different because when you get in that healthy relationship, you're going to have to come to terms that the other people were shitty to you. And sometimes that really sucks because we have these expectations of people and we come up with these ideas of people in our head. And when someone doesn't live up to that expectation, it can be heartbreaking. Friendship breakup is one of the most heartbreaking things I've been through, besides the loss of my mother, obviously. But friendship breakups were way harder for me than any relationship breakup I've ever been through. When you're in a relationship, I think sometimes you have this thought of like, either we get married or we break up, or either we stay together forever or we break up. You know, with friends, you just kind of think, you don't even see a possibility of an ending. And For me, with friends, I go all in and I would give so much of myself that when it would end, it was so heartbreaking. And there would be like this veil that shattered of the person I had just assumed they were. But usually the person that you're thinking they are, that's so great and grand, it's aspects of yourself that you're seeing. This is a quote I saw somewhere. I'm probably going to butcher the quote, but it was basically along the lines of like, when you're in a relationship or something and it feels so magical, but then like there's like, I don't know, something about, what is it? When you leave a situation and you basically realize like you were the magic in that situation. And there are other people out there that can match that magic and amplify yours. And you guys can be amazing together and lift each other up and be there for each other. And it can be organic and natural and beautiful and comforting and real. It doesn't have to be this toxic, stressful thing. What if the good parts of the relationship that you're holding on to are the parts that you are giving into that relationship? For me, with those toxic friendships, there were times that were so good, where I felt like we were so close and so comfortable and it was so fun and we were laughing. And I realized, is that my part of the friendship? Am I the one putting that part in? And could I not find that with someone else where I can have that but not have the toxic parts? When the bad outweighs the good, is it really worth forcing? Now, with some people, you might say yes. That's kind of something you have to decide for yourself. Sometimes we feel like it is worth fighting for a friendship, even if it has a lot of bad, or a relationship, or a family member. If you're going to do that, you have to make sure it's not at the cost of your expense. It has to come from a place of almost, maybe comes from a place of, I don't want to say of not caring, but a place of like, I'm gonna tell them how I feel. I'm gonna set this boundary. I'm gonna hope for the best, but I'm not going to berate myself anymore for if it doesn't go the way I want. I'm not going to blame myself if it doesn't go the way I want. I'm gonna kind of be neutral in the situation, because you don't want to continue the cycle of you set a boundary and then you expect them to change. You expect that they're willing to put in the effort, but in reality, it was you that was willing to put in the effort. So when they don't, and they don't live up to that expectation, you start to convince yourself, oh, was I not worthy of them putting in the effort? No, because then the cycle continues. You are worthy of someone putting in the effort. The right person will want to put in effort for you. The right friends will want to call you too. The right friends will want to make plans with you. The right friends will want to treat you properly. The right friends want to be around you. The right friends want to cheer you on. The right friends want to support you, just like you do for your friends. It's not, am I not good enough for people to support me? It's, why are you staying around people that aren't willing to support you? Because there are people out there that are willing to support you in all aspects of relationships. Okay? I was in plenty of relationships where they weren't bad people. They just weren't willing to give me the type of support I was willing to give them. And I just thought, oh, maybe I'm just not as good enough as someone else. Why am I affirming that to myself? Why am I making that to be true? When I broke that cycle, what I had to do for relationships, I had to tell myself I'm not dating for a while, because I noticed I was in cycle after cycle after cycle after a while of being with guys that would just call me names. That was a thing, and I was not okay with that, because my mom called me names. When my mom was mad at me, she was really big on name calling, and that is something I will not tolerate now. It always makes me emotional, but I'm not okay with people calling me stupid or ugly or unworthy or whatever. I'm not okay with that. I don't like name calling. And my mom was a big name caller. Someone who just says things they may not mean when they're angry, but they're willing to go low, the low blows. And I had a couple relationships, one after the other, where they would name call. They would say really mean things to me when they were angry. Like, I hate you, or I don't want to be with you. And they would be like, I didn't mean that. Or like, it's things like that, I had a relationship with a guy who was like, oh my gosh, you're just like I thought you'd be. You're what do you call me? White trash, just like I thought you'd be. And later on, he's like, I didn't mean that. I don't mean that. It's like, but you said it. That came from somewhere. And those words sting. And I realized I was in cycle after cycle. And my final relationship before I met Noah was this guy I'd met in Columbus. And he was a nice guy, but when he would get drunk, he would get really upset if anyone spoke to me. His own friends, if they would speak to me, he'd be like, you're such a slut. You're such an attention whore. You're such an attention seeker. I'm like, your friend just came up and said they're so happy for you, for our relationship. And he'd be like, no, you're trying to steal you're just trying to steal my friends. You're being a slut. Like, name calling. And I realized I do not want to live in this cycle anymore. And I am somehow trying to make this person who is not willing to respect me, who does not have any respect for me, clearly, I'm trying to fix him to prove to myself that I am worthy of the people that don't see my worth. I was wasting my time trying to make him see my worth instead of being his karma and telling him no more. I will not be someone that puts up with this, leaves, and then moves on. And that's what I did. I sat down and I made a list of all the qualities I wanted in a relationship. And then I had to take a hard look at myself and ask myself, do I have all of these qualities? Some I did, some I did not. Some I had before I got in these negative relationships, and I had developed new patterns because we do kind of adapt to the relationships we were in. So I had to spend some time working on myself, getting to know myself, my worth, my respect, all the things I wanted in a partner. And then I just met Noah naturally, and he is the most respectful, kind, loving person anyone will ever meet in their life. So you see what I'm saying? You got to break the cycle, and you have to know it's not your fault, but you have to also accept that maybe you're allowing it because you somehow feel like you can fix it or you can change the pattern. It is not up to you. It is not up to you to change them, because there is someone that wants to love you. You don't need to give effort trying to force someone to love you. Let it come naturally. Let it come easy. Maybe come up with an affirmation for yourself. Like, I deserve an easy love. I deserve respect. I deserve love. Have some affirmations for yourself. Make a list of the qualities you want in your friendships, and then kind of analyze. If you feel really drained, analyze, is there someone in your life that maybe you need to set a boundary with, you need to cut off, etc., etc. Because relationships are so important. They're a big part of our life. And that we don't need to treat them lightly. We don't have to take it lightly. You don't have to live an entire life of relationships that are mediocre and toxic. There's so much out there. You just might not realize it yet because maybe you're like me and you thought it was too good to be true. So I just want to say I'm so grateful to people in my life now who are so kind and loving and treat me with respect. And I'm also glad that I have learned to treat myself with respect and others with respect, because I also was a toxic person at many times in my life. I had become a partner that was very negative, and I liked to fight, and I became someone who liked to scream and argue. And that wasn't me. That wasn't who I was. I just was in the wrong relationships. And I hope for some of them that was the case too. I think some of them were just bad people, but some of the people, mostly the friendships, a lot of those friendships, I feel like, I hope that we just weren't the right friends and that they're actually really good people. And I hope that the other friendships they have are beautiful. Like, I don't wish them ill. I don't want to put that much energy out there into wishing someone harm. I wish them well. I hope they're doing great. Honestly, I look back and I hope that they're doing really well. More so than that, I want to make sure I'm doing well. And that matters. Okay, what time is it? It's 12:40, so I've probably been recording for about 20-ish minutes. This might have been a shorter episode, maybe not. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I will have my Instagram and all the links down below. If you're listening to this on audio, just so you know, I am recording them live in the studio if you want to watch over on YouTube. Thank you so much for taking your time out of your day to listen, and I love you very much, and I will talk to you all next time. Bye!